Nice.
Chose that name. So, right.
Nice.
Michael, Dr. Michael, shall we start?
Let's do it. I'm excited.
All right. Perfect. So, hi, Michael. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Nicolette. I'm so happy to be here.
Likewise, the pleasure is all mine. Michael, my name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again. Juxtaposition of your very soul. First off, thank you so much for saying yes to be interviewed today. And I think as you can read from my profile, I am a bit of a curious bird, I would say. I like to dip my hands and my toes into almost anything. And well, because the essence of my podcast talks a lot about self-worth, so of course I think that's the essence of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So yes, so if you would allow me, I would like to give a bit of your introduction to our listeners today before we go straight into our conversation.
That'd be one.
All right. So hey everyone, we have Dr. Michael Jaquith here, who is a PhD chemist who left the corporate world and now helps men everywhere discover how to get more of what they want and live the promise of abundant life. By combining analytical science, psychology, and the time-honored teachings of the faith, Michael helps men who feel stuck, confused, and powerless to unlock those chains and find out what they really want. Michael's married with 6 children and lives in rural Norton, Idaho. Wow.
Wonderful. Well done. Well done. Thank you so much, Nicolette, for that wonderful introduction.
Well, thank you to you too. You make it easier for me. Well, Michael, so tell us, what was it like growing up as Michael Jaquith?
Well, honestly, Nicolette, there were some bumpy spots growing up. And when I was growing up, I came from a pretty poor family, very, very rural area, back in Michigan, actually. And my dad, in his own description, wasn't ready to be married. And that's much of an understatement there. There were some drugs, there was some alcohol, there was some abuse, there were some broken bones, there were some other ladies involved, and then it culminated when there was a lot more specific type of abuse when I was in 6th grade, and he went off to jail for 10 years. And so I came out of that experience really, really angry and really hurt.
Right.
And I was in a kind of a hot mess kind of coming out of that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow, that we're going right straight into this. I guess the first question then to you, Michael, how did you get control of your life, or how can men get more control in their lives?
I think control is such a funny word, Nicolette. I think we chase control in a funny way, and we chase this idea that if we somehow can reach out and grasp it and hold it and just grapple it to the ground in a wrestling style pose, that's how we get control. And I tried it that way for years. It doesn't work. I chased the church of hedonism. I chased the ladies. I chased the alcohol. By the grace of God, I didn't touch the heavy drugs myself. That would have been the end of me probably. But in any case, I tried all that. But I think there's something amazing about surrender as a way to control. And I think when we look at the writings of the ancients and the mystics of any faith, you see this notion that there's so much greater value when there's something outside the self to which one subordinates oneself. Does that make sense?
Walk me through that, please. I mean, I'm getting it. Yeah, it's getting deep.
So here's the problem. If I'm really honest with you, and I feel like I know you already well enough to be honest with you, I'm
yes,
kind of not that great of a person. Like intrinsically, I'm kind of selfish. I'm kind of egotistical at times. If you ask my wife, she has a nice long list of all my flaws. She'll tell you them all in great detail. No, she's a wonderful one. She would never tell you. But they're there. And if I just pursue what Michael wants and rely on Michael to make things happen, it tends not to work so well. Like I'm just being totally transparent with you here, right? And so you can look at this from any secular perspective or in the perspective of any faith. When you, especially as men, I think men see the world a little differently than women do. When a man says, here is something bigger than me, and I'm going to dedicate myself, I will subordinate myself, to place myself beneath this higher thing. Now, for me, I'm going to be real blunt, it's my Christian faith. It's that I believe that there is a God, he created the universe, and he loves each and every one of us, and he has a plan for me. But that particular subordination is not mandatory. I know of from a secular perspective, it could be subordination to a cause, to a country, to even a belief of goodness and truth. But when we do that, what's funny is some of the darker pieces of us just get out of the way. And all of a sudden it's possible now to say, how do I align my life to live with this higher goal and to shed some of my selfishness and some of my pride and my vanity? And the irony of it is that as we go through this process of surrender, we actually end up way more in control.
Yes, that's the paradox.
Yeah.
To flip to even, if I could see it from a different angle, it is like an act of service. When you said it's in subordination, right? It's an act. It's never fulfilling as much as you're going out there to serve people, as much as it is that you're serving for your own goals that you want to achieve. Like it is, to me, and then if you want to tie that back to control, it's like also being in control of yourself in terms of anything, internally, spiritually, anything, mentally, financially. And when you get to that point of control, self-control, self-mastery, and that's when you let go and let God surrender.
Amen. Right there. That is
Amen. Preach. Okay. Well, we made, that was the whole, that's the full circle. Yes, Michael. So how can men make real changes to long-term struggle?
So I think as a man, there's a couple different things against us. We first have to be really willing to explore what's going on. Okay, so I mentioned a little bit about my story of birth here, right? And how I grew up with a lot of wounds. And so I hit the world. I was angry. I was hurt. I was chasing pleasure. And then I hit that moment where I said, cool, I'm giving up this thing. I'm going to do the Christian thing. And I decided, all right, here's my Jesus time. And I'm Catholic. And I jump in the church full steam, right? And I thought to myself, cool, my problems are solved, right? I've done the thing. No, not remotely. Because what hadn't happened was the deep internal work of saying, yeah, I've got some wounds. And they need to be addressed. I'm going to give you a challenge, Nicola. Like anyone listening can take this challenge. And this applies to both men and women. If you have a trigger point where your spouse or whatever, children, coworkers, if they can trigger you, whatever they're triggering you about has way more to do with you than it has to do with them. And it's such a painful thing to realize. My wife's a saint. I can't believe she stuck with me through some of the early years of marriage. I had a lot of trigger points. I might still have one or two, just like maybe one or two. I'm not going to admit to any more at the moment. I have a reputation to maintain here and all that. And when, as a man, I'm willing to take responsibility and stop saying it's her fault that I do this. It's his fault that I do this. It's whatever I want to blame. And hey, look, there's some real causes out there. Like there's some bad stuff that happens in this world, legit. But at the same time, when a man says, I'm going to take responsibility for how I show up, and as part of that means dealing with the baggage that I've got packed with me. And that may mean therapy. That may mean coaching work. That may mean prayer and meditation. That may just mean, reading really, really good self-help books. There's a lot of ways to kind of work on this. And my claim is that when a person says, I'm going to do this, God will make a path appear. The old mantra, I think it's the Chinese proverb, says, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And
when the student is truly ready, the master disappears. That's the second part of it. Yes. I love it. I love it. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
No.
Please. That was a perfect addition. And so, as a man, speaking just as a man, it's not to exclude him at all, but as a man, if I want to make that change, if I want to make that growth, and I've got something I'm struggling with, and look, we've all got stuff we're struggling with.
Yep.
When I take the responsibility and stop blaming someone else, even if it's 99% your wife's fault, why this event goes down this way, and focus just on that 1% that's on me, that's the first step to making real change.
How can people break away from addiction then?
So I think we need to understand, and this is where my scientific background comes a little bit as well, is that addiction is not merely but an immediate behavioral response thing. There are real chemical channels in the brain. And so the first thing I have to say when you're trying to deal with an addiction is you've got to have realistic expectations. I've got a 5-acre property. We live up here in rural Idaho, right? And so if I want more fruit trees, I go out there, I dig a hole, I plant the fruit tree, and it's done. Well, I actually have to put a little fence around because the deer are coming in right now to eat my fruit trees. So but in any case, aside from the silly deer, once I dig the hole, put the tree in the ground, it's done. And there's like a linear thinking saying, or if I'm at work and I want to solve a problem, I'll just do this thing and then it's done. Addictions don't work that way. The neurochemical pathways, the dopamine pathway that are associated with addictive behavior are such that your brain is literally hardwired to punish you for not going down that path. And so the first thing you have to say is like, look, this is a journey. This is a struggle. It's going to take time. The second thing we're going to say is, do we need some assistance here? There's a tremendous number of medications. And I mean this in the legal sense, medications that are designed to help reprogram dopamine responses. That may be a factor. Do you need some sort of, a change of scenery? That's oftentimes a critical part for people suffering with the various addictions, is you've got to make a major change to what is happening, where this addiction is manifesting. If it's alcohol, who are you hanging out with? If it's pornography, then what is on your computer and your phone to prevent you to access these easily? Whatever it is, you have to make a major change. But the third piece, and this is probably the most important piece and arguably the hardest to find, is accountability. Now, men are a little different than women. And I'm going to go to a little tiny bit scriptural here for a second. In the Proverbs, it says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Great line. Sounds super cool. Like, oh, yeah, I'm a man sharpening about a man. Yep, that's what I do. Until you stop and think about, how does iron sharpen iron? Like, you ever picked up two pieces of iron, like tried to sharpen them a little bit? It kind of isn't an easy process. Your hands get kind of sore. But B, it pretty quickly starts making some friction. There's some heat. There's some shrapnel coming off. Like, it's not a safe process here, right? Like, it sounds so clean in the verbiage, but when you really imagine it, it's a messy process, and things sometimes get hurt. Sometimes there's blood in the process. And understanding that there's something critical, that a man needs another man to be his accountability partner, in a similar way that a woman needs another woman to be her accountability partner. Like, exactly. And we have to get there. Like, we men, we just think we can go it alone. Like the old trope of, I don't need to ask for directions, I know the way, is even more true when it's something we're embarrassed about. Now, oftentimes these addictions are so embarrassing, and the thought of going to another man with, no necessarily guarantee of confidentiality and saying, Joe, here's the deal. I did this thing this week, and then I did this thing this week, and I really hurt this person this week, and here's what I did there, and I didn't show up well here. And to hear Joe say, oh, Michael, okay, that's not cool. What are you going to do differently next week? And next week, go back, and Joe's going to say, did you do that thing you said you're going to do? And you're going to be like, not exactly. And he's going to say, why not? What's your plan to change it? Because it didn't work for you to say it last week, so what do you do differently this week? And this dynamic accountability process is baked into our genetics for what we need as that final piece to make a real shift on a problem that is big as addiction.
Coming back to what you said, like having an accountability partner and perhaps a coach or just your close friend, right? Like, I think women, we have been more open about sharing our whatever it is that we're feeling. People call it like a gossip, but it's actually just a bunch of women or girl to girl talk and saying, hey, I don't really feel good about this thing. I don't know, what do you think I should do? But somehow, deep down in intuition, it's there, but you just need that sounding board, right? But for men, it's difficult, but I think it's coming. I see some, I think, around me at least.
I think two things I need to point out. Number one is that when it comes to this sort of work and accountability, men and women speak different languages. My accountability partner the other day, I was laying some stuff on him, and he went off and he prayed about it. He comes back to me, it was about a week and a half later, and he says, okay, Michael, I really prayed about this and thought about this, and here's the message I want to say to you. And he said, stop doing this, you're slacking off, you're not being serious here, this. And all I said is I stood there and went, oh. He says, good. That was exactly the right response. And like, there's encoded in the male language a totally different set of responses than there's in the female language. So we first have to understand that, right? But then
I didn't get that though. What does that mean when you say, oh? Are you saying that, okay, I understand and I will do it, or oh, I don't feel like doing it?
So that particular was that sounds really, really hard, and I know that's the right answer, but I don't like it. And it sounds so silly to say it, but I mean this. Men and women speak a different language. If you've ever had an argument with your spouse, you know what I mean. Like, partway through the argument, you're like, what words are coming out of this crazy person's mouth? Because that's not what I'm speaking. And you'll say something, and then they'll respond. I don't care which way you're talking about. They respond as if you're speaking some different language. And you're like, I didn't say that at all. Where is this coming from? And it's super frustrating when you're in the argument with your spouse, right? And hopefully some of you are laughing right now. You've all been there.
No, it's funny because I had the same argument just today, this morning, before coming on to this interview, and I was like,
we all do. We all do. And yet we sit back and try to pretend like we speak the same language. And to a certain extent, the last piece I have to bring in here is we have to understand what the cultural expectations are for men right now. And the cultural expectations for men are actually impossible. Right now, culture tells men, be a man, be strong, but don't be dangerous. And they're like, share your feelings, but don't be weak. And you start to look at some of these juxtapositions, and it's actually not possible. Like, to be strong is to be dangerous. To share what's inside me is to be vulnerable and to weak.
Yeah.
And weak, not in the sense of that you don't have the muscle or the strength, more in the sense of if the other person were of a malicious intent, they could capitalize on you right there. And so the average male who grew up with role models like Indiana Jones or Homer Simpson has no idea how to stand in a strong, authentic masculinity that's strong enough to share, but vulnerable enough to make it connective. And so it's really a hard challenge. I think women right now, it does come more easily to them. I'm not sure that's always been true, but I think right now in our current culture, it does. And so for a lot of men, they actually really need someone to walk them through. This is how you share. This is how you hold someone accountable. It sounds silly to say it, but it's just what we've got to do.
So who could they turn to? Let's say I have a friend.
So first off, there's a growing number of people, a growing number of men who are really leading the pioneer in this. I can throw off a couple of different names. There's like Man on Fire organization, the Powerful Man organization. My organization is awesome too, but the key is going to be you're going to find what you're looking for is an alignment of values. Okay. So I chose those three because those are three different ones. The first one's a Protestant organization. Love them dearly. Love them dearly. The second one's a secular organization. And mine is a Catholic organization. And what you've got to do is you've got to find a man that you believe can role model masculine strength in a way that's compatible with your value system. Because here's the reality here. You have to grow strong in your values. An interesting piece of data that I think a lot of people slightly misinterpret. There's a great study done in Great Britain back in I believe it was the early 1900s, it might have been the late 90s, that looked at mothers and fathers staying at home, who was a faithful person, religious person, and what were the kids. And the study overwhelmingly said, kids take their religion from their father. Period. End of story. Not from mom. And so one of the things I think people misunderstand there is that men establish the values, and that value message becomes part of our identity. And so if you are identifying yourself as a Christian and you try to form yourself in a value system that's not Christian, it's going to be slightly incoherent. It's going to be a slightly bit of a mix match. The psychological term is disintegrated because there's a piece of you that doesn't fit with the other pieces of you. And you can only really be truly strong when all of the pieces of you as a man start to align, when they're authentic, when you trust yourself to be consistent from top to bottom of all the different parts aligning. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but to answer your question, find a group that encompasses male strength consistent with your values.
How did you do it? How did you pull yourself out of the years of abuse?
So I sometimes joke around that God understands me very well. I told you early on, I'm sometimes a bit of a problem child, right? And so God's primary communication system with me, primary communication is the 2x4 to the head. And so that's the system that says, I'm doing great. I've got my plane. I'm going to my plane. Boom. Oh, that one hurt. Right? And so
it doesn't only happen to you, it happens to me too, I think, to everybody.
Exactly. So let me tell you a real short story. I was married. We had one child at the time, and she was one. We were at church. And, one of the takeaways from my childhood was I really struggled with anger. I didn't know that. I didn't know how much anger I had inside me. But because of what my dad had done, because of a lot of stuff that happened, I had a deep ball of unresolved anger. And so I remember, this is not a flattering story to me, Nicolette. My 1 year was being a typical 1 year. She was just screaming, and she knew she was getting me going. She was screaming, and I took her to the cry room, and I didn't hurt her. I was like kind of just like squeezing her, be quiet. Like I was just like not being a calm, loving father. Well, I didn't know it, but there's a wonderful man who was watching me. He didn't say anything that day, but the next Sunday, his name is Ben, and I give Ben full marks for bravery for this. This was awesome. Ben comes up to me after church, and he introduced himself, shakes my hand, said, "Hey, my name is Ben. I don't know if this is going to rub you the wrong way, but should I have a minute to talk with you real quickly?" And I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" And he says, "Well, a few years ago, I was really struggling, and another man came up to me and offered to talk about some stuff and see how it's going." And he reaches down to his pocket and he pulls out this flash drive and he says, "I really had a lot of growth I had to do. And I put together this. These are all the audiobooks and all the different various talks that have really helped shape me to what I am now. And I'd just like to give it to you. And he said, if you find this offensive, throw it in the trash once and walk away, and I won't ever ask you again. But If you are interested, he then reaches out of the pocket, pulls out a card. He says, here's a card. Whenever you want to, we'll have lunch. And you tell me what's going on and what's going on with what you're listening to. And I was like, dang it, I've been discovered. Oh no, oh no. Right, like I'm freaking out inside. By the grace of God, by the way, Ben was very clever because he also had his wife talk to my wife to set the stage for this. And so,
and that was
home
God speaking.
Yes. And my wife's like, you should do that. I'm like, fine. So I stick the flash drive in. First talk, feeling with anger. Yep. So for me, I've been given a great series of mentors, men that of their own volition and courage stepped into my life and said, Michael, I see you're struggling. I can help you. It's going to be hard. What Ben challenged me to do was the first of many great mentors who challenged me to realize it's not about me. It's not about what I want. I don't get what I want by trying to get what I want. I get what I want by subordinating myself to something bigger, by forgiving, even when it's not deserved. Like there's a series of lessons that you start to implement that basically form, I'll say, the core of the Judeo-Christian framework, these lessons of how to live in a way that's consistent with becoming who you want to be. And for almost all of time, this happened from an older man to a younger man. Look, imagine you have like a village, right? And your average village, even 200 years ago, they never went anywhere. You grew up in the village. You knew all the people there. Everyone knew each other. And there's a number of older men who walk upside the young men, but whack them upside the head. All right, young Bill, stop doing that. And young Bill like, yeah, okay. And then have this deep conversation. But we've lost that because we move around so much now. There's no old timers that I know and respect anymore that I live with. And this mentoring process that's fundamental to human biology is gone. And so now we're all struggling as a society. How do we recreate this thing? It's clearly necessary. We're all clearly struggling. Men and women both alike are struggling due to the lack of this multi-generational community support system. As we go through the struggle, we're kind of redefining as we go. How do we do it?
So do you require somebody to be like face-to-face, or can it be done like virtually?
It can totally be done by Zoom. I know it is better face by face. Like, there's no substitute for face by face. However, this is the reality of the world we live in. I live in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. Getting face to face with me is not easy. Much of the year, you need snow tires to get face to face with me. And the Zoom connection is better than you think when both parties are willing to be completely present. One of the greatest gifts we as humans can give another human is to be completely present. I was reading a great psychology book the other day that says, it's more important that a therapist learn to give his complete and total presence to the client than he actually knows what he's doing. And that the presence alone is a more powerful healing than all the technical know-how. That's how our brains are wired to respond.
That's true. Why they resonate with me is because I'm about to go into my own therapy and coaching practice. I just left my 9-to-5 last month.
Oh, so, congratulations.
Thank you so much. And it's like God is speaking to me through all the guests that I have on my show. It's like, Nicolette, you're on the right path. Just go ahead and do it.
The great thing about when you finally let God be God and let me be not God is you realize there's no coincidences, no accidents. Everything happens for a greater good. And it is such an empowering consequence of surrender. Like we as a society, we hate surrender. I hate surrender. Everyone hates surrender. But when we do it, what we get is so much more than what we give. And that is a core tenet that you have to hold to. And if God has led you in this path, he will put the people in the way that you need to bump into.
That's true. If God got you to here, he will bring you through it, right?
The old joke is, do you know how to make God laugh? You tell him your plans.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. No, I'm thinking, oh shit. Yeah. God, I want this. And it's like,
yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you want that? Okay, but I got something better for you. What do you mean? Why are you settling for this?
Well, that was my first experience with Christianity. Like, I converted. I'm like, I walk in the church. I'm like, all right, God, here's the deal. Here's what I'm going to do today. You need you to show up and do this, this, and this. Everything else I got. Good. All right. We have the great chat, God. Nice talking to you. I'll see you next week. Like, that's what we try to do. And we're like, that's not surrender. He's just up there laughing.
Exactly. Oh my God. We're just, that's, I wonder, like, he's, imagine that you are doing some stupid things right now and he's omnipresent. He's always seeing you. And imagine him just laughing like, why? I told you not to do that, right? Just go there already. You want to reach here. You said you want this, but you're doing exactly the opposite. It's getting you to this point. This is where the the tower moment. You don't want to listen? Here, let me nudge you.
I think there's a lot of good that comes when we really explore the word want. Want is such a funny word in the language, and we abuse it so
that's
often.
True. That's
Here's
true.
a great example. So I love chocolate and I love meat. I do not like vegetables. I've never enjoyed broccoli, right?
But
Nevertheless,
do you take salad? No.
Yes, I will eat salad because it's
Look at
good for you.
The sigh.
I know, right? See, men communicate with grunts and sighs a lot. And here's what I say sometimes. I want to eat the salad because, of course, I want the health benefits of eating the salad. But I understand, Nicolette, I want to eat the chocolate.
I know.
And we use the same word. It means something totally different. And when I get to where I understand that the subordination process transforms a salad want eventually into a chocolate want. And it's this transformation process that says we start with, fine, I'll do the right thing, I guess, because it should make things better, fine. And as we progress, it becomes, I love who I am. I love who I get to be when I do this right thing. And it transforms that word want. And there's this ocean of events and transformation happening under the umbrella of this little 4-letter word. And we lose sight of that. We lose the ability to celebrate it because we don't even see it.
Oh, that is so powerful. You flip the script, right? It's
Right.
not that, it's not that you have to, but that it's the outcome of the result that the person that you become because you do this thing. Wow, I am, poof, moments whenever I talk to people. Right. Michael, how can men love their lives and be more comfortable with themselves?
So we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but we talked a lot about the surrender piece, but I want to put one more piece in there. And men, in a particular way, are meant to be strong. Now, I happen to be relatively strong normally. I actually injured my back deadlifting. So at the moment, I can't lift very much weight at all. It's a little unfortunate. Praise the Lord for ibuprofen. And we sometimes get confused that the strength we're called to is physical strength. And indeed, a little bit it is. That's not the real strength. The strength that I believe men are called to if they want to love their lives and enjoy their life is a much more profound, well-rounded strength. We need to be strong intellectually, which a lot of men do. That was not too hard. We need to be strong spiritually, which less are, but some. This next one's the doozy. We need to be strong emotionally. A lot of men don't even know what that means. And I'll give you a great example. If you're a man, absolutely. Here's one type of emotional strength that men struggle with. When your wife is mad, particularly mad at you, can you stay totally crystal calm and let her storm swirl around where you hold yourself grounded and love her, no matter what words come out of her mouth, no matter how often your name's included in that list of words, you stay calm and love her through it. And if you are, that is one type of emotional strength. And this is the sort of stuff, as a man, nobody taught me that. The role models I had were anger is masculine, defend your honor with anger, lash out. No way, man, did everyone ever say that it's one of the greatest gifts you can give your children, your wives, your coworkers, is the ability to stay super calm, attentive, in full presence with them when they're rage and storming, which we all are sometimes, to love them through it, and then to even in that moment serve them and see where they're really at. And this makes healing and connection powerful. A powerful healing connection as an option that otherwise would never be there. As a man, if I lose it in response to whoever I'm talking to, my ability to make my life and their lives better is gone. I just don't have it anymore. And so as a man, I've got to have emotional strength, the ability to be decisive but calm, gentle but firm. And this package of what masculinity used to mean is almost forgotten. And our culture, by and large, has slapped the word toxic on it because they're afraid of it, and rightly so. Men are the most dangerous thing in the world. No holds barred. And to be a man that's comfortable, to be strong, will not only enable everyone else in your life to calm down, to rest in your strength, to be more grounded as well, but it will enable you to love who you are better and then to show up better for other people. One of the biblical axioms that's always kind of weird is you cannot give what you do not have. And at the same time we read that, right? But our Lord says the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, what if you don't love yourself? How do you give that love? But here's the honesty. Most of us hate ourselves. And I'll prove it to you. When you talk to yourself, what kind of stuff do you tell yourself? If someone spoke to your children the way you speak to yourself in your head, would you not slap them?
Yeah.
But we all do this.
Mm.
Why? Because there's a disconnect in who we are and who we want to be, who we think is lovable. And this disconnect then transposes itself out into relationships with all the other people we know.
Mm.
So if you want to be a man who loves life and loves to do, you first have to love yourself, not in a perverted way, not in like some sort of sexual fantasy way, in a deep, profound admiration, respect, and care for myself. And there's one more strength I have to mention, because I think a lot of men get very confused about this, but I include what I call sexual strength in the list. Now, sexual strength is not some sort of prowess of some sort of, I don't know what the terms are, but like, significant achievement tally marks. This is about self-denial. This is about harnessing this sexual energy that God has given men into a direction for good. I have to tell a quick story here. Jesus doesn't use a lot of words to describe himself in the Bible. There's a lot of words other people use to describe him, but he doesn't use many words to describe himself. But there's one word he does that is very clearly mentioned, and the word is meek. And meek is a funny word. It's a very old word. All right. So you have to understand the origin of the word meek was actually related to horses. And so imagine you catch this wild stallion, this epitome of strength and power and vitality. Well, the problem is it's wild. You can't harness it. It won't accept a bit. It won't accept a saddle. You can't hook it up to the wagon you want to pull or the plow you want to pull. And so the process of meeking a horse is when you take the horse and teach it to subordinate itself to a higher calling. When it doesn't lose its power, the stallion is still just as strong, but now it allows itself to be directed in a way that creates tremendously good things. So when our Lord says this word meek, he's simultaneously saying, I am extremely strong. And by the way, dude, like this dude was not, we call him a carpenter, but a lot of that was actually stonework. Like this dude would have been ripped. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesus would probably have had like a similar physique, except for Jesus probably a better cardiovascular, whatever, right? But like Jesus is ripped. He's strong.
Yeah.
And he's strong emotionally. But he subordinates himself. And this is one of the secrets here to masculine strength, is it's not just, can I deadlift 400 pounds, which I can. It's, can I subordinate that strength in the right direction, in a direction that's good. Look, I'm pretty good linguistically. I can argue with my wife and I can crush her. I'm sad to say I've done that more than I should. I've failed to subordinate myself in the right direction. And for men, if you want to live a life that's full of meaning, if you are not subordinated, it doesn't work. A wild stallion that doesn't work in conjunction with whatever else is going on just hurts people. And I've been there. I've done that. I have a lot of wounds I have left in my past. I don't say that from a place of pride or happiness. I pray regularly for many of the people I've hurt in the past.
Wow. I've been listening to you. It's like giving me that time to really have an introspection of myself, the people around me, even like the man in my life. Oh, I was thinking like they should, because this episode is gonna come like in the next few months, and I don't know if I should speed it up, and like you guys need to hear it. And you were saying when you were arguing with your wife, right? So how, and then having that ability to create that safe space for her while she's going through this whirlwind of emotions, like from now, if you flip it, how is the woman in this, how are they, like, so for example, it can't only be her only, right? So there must be times where you're the one like having that emotion. So how is she acting in that dynamic?
Okay, so first off, I'm going to be very hesitant to speak too much about the woman's role, because as a man, I'm somewhat underqualified there. My wife is much more qualified. She actually has also a life coach that works with women. But nice. I want to offer an image. I love dancing, and we see dancing as such a great image for so many things. In fact, one of my favorite images for God is as a dance. Tim Keller, about in New York City, first gave me this image, and I love this image. Imagine you have God the Father, who loves so much, his love springs forth with God the Son. And the two of them are involved in this infinite cosmic dance. There's infinite beauty, and the love and the beauty is so great, it springs forth the Holy Spirit. And now you have this even more complex dance. And God says, you know what? I want more people to join in the dance. Come, dance with us. And so he creates the angels, he creates man. And all of salvation could be viewed as an invitation. Come, join the dance. dance with us. You have to let go of yourself. You can't come here and dance under your rules because you're going to step on people's toes. But if you subordinate yourself, you can join this beautiful, beautiful dance. And you see this dance growing in complexity and cosmic beauty as more and more souls join. And so that's one possible image of God, but it's also an image of marriage. And when you look at the image of dancing in marriage, the role of a woman, and this may not settle well with some female listeners, is to enter the dance and allow the husband to be the lead. Now, there's a lot of great things that come when you let the husband be the lead. And you see this in all traditional dances. The man's the lead. It's not sexist. It's not some sort of like male patriarchal oppression thing. It's not that at all. It's the natural order. And it's which both roles thrive best. The woman who enters in and allows his hand. So my wife and I swing dance, right? So you raise your left hand. I can't even see in the camera in order to signal an outside turn. Okay. And so I raise my hand this way, and then she knows she starts spinning around this way, right? And it's great fun for her because she gets to live the dance and respond. Now, coming to background, maybe I'll move my hand this way to indicate a flip around back the other way again, right? And so she doesn't even know what's going to come. There's a spot in the dance where I have to signal to her, are you going to keep flipping this way? You're going to turn around this way? Oh, are you just going to come this way? And I'm going to flip. You don't know. And it's kind of fun, right? And there's this dynamic of the dance where each couple stops thinking about themselves and thinking about the other. The man thinks, how do I lead this woman in the dance so that she loves it? She's living life and is thrilled and happy. This is the delight of a husband when his wife is laughing. I heard it once that the sexiest thing a woman can wear is a smile. And the male heart erupts in pleasure to see his woman filled with joy. And you see this in the dance with a good dancing partner. Full confession, I'm not that good of a dancer. Actually, this kind of breaks my model a little bit here, right? But I have to have some humility. But with a good dancing partner who's better than me, and you watch what he can do, and he can spin the girl around and cause her to do these flips, and maybe someone from all the fancy stuff. And she gets done, she's out of breath, and she's like, her eyes are glistening with a little bit of tears. What a dance. But for that dance to work, she has to submit to his lead.
Yes.
That doesn't mean he gets all the power. That doesn't mean he gets all the position. In fact, actually, she looks better in the dance. She has the more interesting spins. She tends to be more eye-catching. But that submission is a key part of it. And it is something that is very, very hard for women today for lots of very, very good reasons. Most notably all, men are jerks sometimes. No, scratch that. Men are jerks most of the time. Occasionally, we manage to leave the turpitude behind. But let's call a spade a spade. And so then to say as a woman who's raised in the society today, which has some messages that aren't great for women, and pulls in and says, hey, submit to your husband is such a scary thing. But when you view it as the dance and the two becoming one, and each one focusing on serving the other rather than serving themselves, which, hey, we fail sometimes. As a husband, I've had plenty of times I have failed and tried to serve myself. I'm not trying to be, prideful, but the goal, the destination of the dance is to serve the other. Does that help answer that question at all?
Yeah. I mean, I am mind blown. Like, I will go back and implement that in my own life. Like,
swing dancing lessons for everyone.
Yeah. I used to dance, but I mean the analogy of a dance, a marriage as a dance. I mean that's it. That's it. That's the key. And you say you submit, but then not submitting doesn't mean you lose your strength. And that goes from it that for the women, because again, like you said, women who were raised today, they had to somehow exude their masculinity than their femininity, because femininity is all about receiving, being open. Masculinity is that because it can stem from their upbringing or the relationships that they've had, and that sort of molded them into like, okay, it's like I cannot trust. It's not safe for me to be number one myself, to be safe, and therefore I have to put on this mask, and that really flips the whole thing about women. Just it to be honest, why I'm struggling is because I used to be like that.
Right. Most are.
Yeah, still healing and still being aware, like to this day, as we speak. Like, yeah, oh, okay, I think the key is also having that self-awareness. You catch yourself trying to, overtake or say that, okay, you can't say that, you can't, who are you to say that to me? And,
So all of the ancient church ancients talk about the number one greatest sin is pride. And the reason why it's the most horrible sin is because it's so invisible. It hides itself so well. It feels good. It covers itself with layers of justification. And both men and
Yeah.
women
Oh my.
express pride in very, very different ways. And
Yes,
we,
that's true. That's
as
true.
humans, we're a prideful people. Like that is just, there's no other way to say it. All of us, men and women both. But
Yeah.
what you're describing there is a double failure of pride. It's a failure of pride in the man to refuse to step up, take responsibility for his own shortcomings. Because what men do is we're afraid of our shortcomings. We're afraid of weakness. And so because we're afraid of weakness, we hide the weakness. All right. And the pride says, I can't be weak. I can't appear weak. I can't even appear weak to myself. I have to hide it. And so when I hide it, I can't work on it. I can't grow. I can't develop. And here's the secret. If I don't grow in my own strengths as a masculine, I don't mean physical, emotional strength, spiritual strength, all these different strengths. If I don't grow in these strengths, then I cannot provide the foundation that my wife needs to be feminine. If there's not a firm foundation there for her, she's going to get scared, rightly so. Like, who wants to rest their house on the sand? Like, you could have a man who's sand, and a woman comes up and is overly feminine, and the waves come in and swamp her, and she's like, well, that didn't work. Well, yeah, it doesn't work. As a man, you've got to go first. It's the job of the husband first to become that foundation. I don't care who makes the money. This isn't about making the money. This is about the foundation of the relationship. It's perfectly fine if the woman makes the money. There's other ways that a woman can be in her masculine energy at work, come home and shift into a feminine energy with her husband at home.
Yeah.
That is possible. It's hard, but it's possible. But understand that in the home, if you don't have that dynamic, if the husband doesn't shift into his masculine, his wife cannot shift into her feminine. And then you have this really yucky situation that develops. Now, I'm also a chemist. And so as a chemist, we do a lot with charges. And so you have protons and electrons. Cute little fact, by the way, that if you had 1% more protons in your body, and I had 1% more protons in my body, the force between us, the repulsive force, could push the planet. We'd both be squished in smithereens first. But that force would be strong enough to move planet Earth, okay? That's how sensitive we are to little tiny bits of charge and balance. It's the same thing with marriage. If the husband and the wife are both the same level, middle-ish, gooey, messy mess of masculine and femininity, there's no attraction there. If they're both masculine, there's actually repulsion. If they're both feminine, there's actually repulsion. Attraction comes when she is feminine and he is masculine. And for that to happen, he has to go first, and he has to ground himself. And we've talked about all these different forms of strengths. Put one more strength in there, and this is one is key to me with the faith, is grounding myself specifically to that higher power, which I call God. Subordinating myself that way grounds me. And so when my wife, because to be feminine, the ancients call it chaos, and we have a bad idea of chaos these days. But understand that everything life-giving, everything good, everything you need to survive and grow comes from chaos. Everything in order is already known. So if you need something different, it's not going to be found in order. It's in chaos. And the chaos is life. Chaos is literally that which gives forth new life, new potential, and new opportunities and new energy. For her to live in her femininity, she has to be the grounding first. So I have a lot of sympathy for women who are afraid to be feminine, but I'll encourage them to encourage their men to ground themselves in masculine, become strong, and encourage them to do the super risky, scary thing of taking the risk and going and becoming more feminine.
And submit.
And submit. That terrible little word.
Wow. I know. Okay. We just like my next question was how can men improve their marriages and relationship? I think we just covered that. So Michael, how does the Christian faith combine with modern psychology and coaching?
The short answer to that is brilliantly. But the longer answer to that, here's my claim to you and to everyone listening. There's a tremendous amount of brilliant psychological research being done that is rediscovering the truths that have been coded in the Bible for over 2,000 years. And you see this again and again as you look at these dynamics. Here's a great example. There's a lot of really cool work being done on genders and temperamental distributions and preferences. All right. And so in some of the most egalitarian countries in the world, where you'd think the gender differences would be the smallest, they actually becoming the largest. And when you truly level the playing field and allow men and women to progress like towards where they want to progress, the differences actually become more stark and more increased. And there's this lie right now in the world that says, men and women are the same thing with different plumbing, maybe a different hormone or two. That's just such a lie. The beauty of the man and the beauty of the woman are so different. And as you remove the constraints society's place, you see that beauty and that difference becoming more manifest. And it manifests directly into a way that aligns with the Christian faith. And here's another great little example of this. If you look at history, there's a funny thing about history. Until for some reason about 1,400 years ago, there was a universal acceptance of slavery everywhere. Women, not citizens human even anywhere. Like there's all this oppression, all this horrible idea, and this magical thing happens somewhere between 400 and 600 AD that something starts to appear, which is this idea that all humans have the innate dignity of being a creation of God. Man, woman, colored, whatever, all humans have this innate dignity. And this idea comes and works its way through. It forms the foundation of the British legal system, which forms the foundation of the American legal system, which forms the foundation of every legal system of every first world country in the world, because it's such a powerful idea. It radically transforms human-to-human interactions, and it radically unleashes a creative power within humans that's caused this technological revolution that we're now riding now. And simultaneously is this edge of this wave where we now are in danger of losing that dignity. And there's a lot of different examples where we're in danger of losing it. But as we start to lose it, and you're seeing this, not only do we lose the faith, we even lose science, because all of this is predicated. Science and the faith aren't two separate things. They're highly interconnected. And the foundations which make scientific progress possible are the foundations brought about by the faith. And it's this myth that somehow like there's the new age that does this psychology stuff, and there's those old dotards over there wearing funny robes that are the clerics, and that somehow they're told a different thing. And hey, look, I get it. Both sides have abused each other for millennia. Fair enough.
Millennia, yes.
But the core truths are completely alive.
Wow, beautiful. To me, it's like religion, science, and spirituality. This is all actually they're on the same. They're aligned.
They're all seeking truth.
Yeah, they're all yes, exactly. We're all seeking truth. They're all seeking truth, and for one to condemn the other, it's that it shouldn't even be a conversation to begin with. But I guess right now people are awakening to that, and essentially, yeah,
They are. Praise the Lord, they are. There's a number of
yes,
agendas in the world to deny truth, to deny even the possibility of objective truth. And look, there totally is relative truth. Like, I happen to like chocolate a lot. I mentioned that earlier. I know other people don't like chocolate as much. Crazy, and I'm probably brain parasites. But there are people in the world who don't like chocolate as much. That's a relative truth, right? But when anyone denies objective truth, they don't just deny religion, they deny science, they deny reality, they deny truth, they deny happiness. Like this truth, happiness, beauty, goodness all lie together, they all fall together.
yeah, yeah, yes. Reach to the choir. All right, a few more questions, Michael.
Absolutely.
Right. What I think we touched about this, but let's hear what you have to say. What role should emotion, empathy, and compassion play in a man's life?
So we need to understand that men have a very different calling than women. I'm going to lean a little bit on the theological teachings of my old home buddy, St. John Paul the Great. Paul also known as John Paul II. He has this amazing treatise of works called The Theology of the Body. And he does this amazing thing where he pulls forth the very design of the human body as an image of what each gender is called to do. And he says women have the gift of receptivity. The feminine genius is this ability to receive, to pull inwards. They have this inward focus. And women, you see this with little children. You see this with a random stranger on the street who's hurting and sad. Women have this ability to anyone to walk up and pull them in, comfort them, support them. And this is an amazing gift of femininity. Men, by contrast, have this outward focused. And you see this stark difference is multiplies into every facet of life. Women make friends face to face. They draw into each other. Men make friends side by side. Most of my good friends have come from working together on some sort of project. Maybe we're building a fence. Maybe we're digging a well. I don't care what it is. Like whatever we're doing, we're working side by side. Because men have this outward focus. There has to be something outward to it. When a man mentors a man, it always has an outward focus to it. Now, men have got to be able to have empathy and have got to be able to have this emotional connection. But they need to understand it has a different directionality than what women do. Now, this is oftentimes a conflict for parents, particularly parents of 6 to 10-year-olds, where there's like this funny transition where when a baby is born, the mother's way is the way. Like there's just no two bits to it. Like the baby cries, you got to take care of it, right? But as they get older, it's very clear at some point in time they need to cry, and you don't respond right away. Why? Well, because you're loving the child in the future. Because if you respond every time now, the child in the future is going to have a horrible life. And so the intrinsic masculine perspective, men tend to err by leaning too far into loving the child of the future. That's why they're hard on the child now. Women tend to
Yeah.
err too much on loving the child now and aren't thinking enough of the child in the future. This is where, and it's extreme. You see this as the edible mother complex. But understanding here, there's a man. I need that connection. I need to understand it within my directionality. So if I go up to another man and I work beside him, there's a young man that I know very well named Owen. He's 18. He's about to get married. He and I have had a number of conversations recently. When Owen and I talk, we'll be sometimes side by side working on a project. He happens to be working on some house projects. I've been over helping to do some of that. And we talk. And there's an empathy there that's necessary for Owen to hear what I am saying, for him to absorb it, for him to take it in. All right. And that empathy means I'm not thinking about myself. I'm emotionally sharing parts of myself that are vulnerable. I share stories where I've screwed up. Stories, if they were known, would be very embarrassing. I've got enough embarrassments already. And Owen then is able to hear this and receive this. But that's a different empathy than when with a woman. And so when I'm with my wife, let's be very precise here, or actually with my daughters as well, there's a funny parallel, but slightly different, obviously. I need to be able to then open myself with emotional connection, but still in a way where I don't pretend to be a woman, where I'm still more grounded, where I'm not just going to echo and resonate when she goes, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. I love my wife dearly, but women sometimes do that, right? And if I go back, oh yes, me too. That's not masculine empathy. That's just, well, I'm not sure what that is, other than something worth laughing at. As a man, sorry, I got a little further. As a man, when I can open myself up as a man with a focus of, yes, daughter, you can talk to me about this. And we had this conversation the other day. And I'm not liberty to reveal the contents, obviously. But my daughter and I were in the car, we're driving back from a church event, and she just started talking to me about some stuff that went down. And just for me to sit there and to acknowledge that's a yucky feeling. Those events, I would feel yucky about what happened there too. And I would feel like you're feeling right now. But also then to ground it and not to magnify it, but there's a difference there. There's an emotional connection that still lets me be a man. It lets me hear her, empathize with her, support her, but be a foundation for her. And that can sound as simple as, I will always love you, and you will always be amazing. You'll always be beautiful. No matter what those people said, no matter what happened in this particular event, these will always be true. And there's a grounding there that a man can deliver in a different way when he remembers who he is and what he is. And even there's a little bit of an outward focus. You hear the outward focus there in me. It's the pointing not only to her, but to her greatest good and inviting her to look at that as well. And that there's a bit of a future love there. And so men get in trouble when they try to be emotional like women do. Aside from my silly example, which you may be laughing at for a while. We just can't do it. We're not wired that way.
Yeah.
We're wired to be something different.
You said that about with your daughter. I had the same conversation with my dad, and I had like this thing that was bothering in my head, and I had to call him, and I was like, Dad, can you hear me out? This is this, da, 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 da. And then I said, okay, I just, sometimes men they come in with the solution, right? Like women when you rant to your girlfriends or your friends, they'll be like, they'll listen, okay, but men is like, oh, it's actually easy, you should just do this, and it's a solution, providing solution is that sometimes you just want them to hear you out, and then I said, okay, Dad, I just want you to hear me out, and he was like, okay, all right, okay, go on, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. Okay, now can I talk? And then he started speaking, and I was like, what every single thing that you said just now just depicted him in his true masculinity.
Right.
That is why I go to him for advice. It's like this self-respect that I have for him, like, and not to say not many people that have that privilege, especially daughter and father, don't have that, but between me and him, he's always had that provided that space for me. But of course, over the years, like when I was a kid, it's different. Like he would still like Asian parenting. He would still like when I talk back, he's like, "How dare you?" But right now, because I'm an adult, so he's also well in his 60s, so it is more like very me coming to him to confide in a man figure in my life. But with my mother, it's different.
Yes,
because
it has to be.
I would go to her. It's like, Mom, da, 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 and she was like, she tends to agree, but
Mhm.
I know but certain things I gotta go to my dad to get like some clarity on what do I need to do next. Like he
An
would
outward
provide that
direction.
foundation. Yes, an outward direction. Yes, yes.
Can I tell you the secret why most men jump to fix it mode so fast?
Okay, please do. Yes.
They're afraid they aren't strong enough to be present in their wife's pain, and they might be right if they haven't worked on that strength. It is, I said earlier, it's one of the hardest things for a man to be present in your wife's pain. It's very hard, particularly emotional pain, because most of us just don't understand it well enough. And so we see our wife's emotional pain, and a piece of us freaks out inside. It's the opposite of strength. It's the opposite of foundation grounding. We freak out inside. We're like, oh my gosh, my wife's losing it. Oh no, what does this mean for me? What does it mean for our marriage? Ah, ah. And we start freaking out like that, right? And so what do?
Yeah.
Let's fix it. Solve the problem now. We must solve it right now. When the reality is, if you just have that strength to say, look, she's a human being. She's a woman. She's allowed to have feelings. The feelings are going to swirl. They may not make sense to me. They may even be a little painful. Hey, look, it will always be true that when my wife is unhappy and upset, it hurts. It does hurt. Like as a man, it hurts. But the gift of giving her the ability to have her own emotions, of not trying to regulate her emotions for her, is such a gift to give. It is hard. It's scary. We men get so freaked out about it, particularly if we haven't been trained that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, this needs to be broadcasted globally, like really, the conversation we're having right now. Oh, thank you so much, Michael. Those are like golden nuggets. So what is next for you, Michael?
I spent almost a decade in corporate research, and it's funny when you do that, you kind of start to think the corporate way. And I was never really an entrepreneur. Like, this is kind of a funny thing. The only reason I ended up here is because remember that previously mentioned 2x4 to the head? God had to apply that several times to get me into this position here where I'm doing the entrepreneurial thing. To leave behind the corporate golden handcuffs. Oh man, I'm cheering you on because I remember how hard that was. That is so hard. And what's next for me? The short answer is if I say an actual plan, guys will start laughing. But
I mean,
right now, I do a lot of coaching work with men. I have the best job in the world. I just want to keep spreading it more. I've got a couple different ideas how to spread some stuff. I'm actually putting together right now. By the time this goes out, this should be ready. A free downloadable exercise that I call the Manly Strength Assessment. It comes along with a couple of videos to walk you through how to fill it out. And it goes through 30 different strengths in each of the 5 categories I mentioned earlier. And each one gets an independent score from 0 to 100. And the goal of this whole exercise is to say, if I want to become more strong, where's my weakest area? What do I work on first? And so this is an exercise designed to help a man quickly say, whoa, dude, I got some problems in my emotional stability and my generosity. I got to work on those 2. And then it leads to some different exercises you can do to start working on those strengths. Exercising any strength is the same thing as when you're in the gym, right? You go to the gym, you start with a little light barbell, you keep doing the reps, you do the motions, you move to the bigger barbell, put more weights on there, and eventually you're getting this big old stack of stuff you pick up like I do before I hurt my back stupidly, that you can then pick up and move around, right? Yes. Not that I'm so bitter about that. I don't know who would be bitter about that right now. No one here. But anyways, and so you do the reps and you get stronger. And it's the same thing in every other aspect of life. And so that's like one little thing I'm putting together right now. But the core of it is, Nicolette, is I'm trying to get this word out there as well, because I don't think there's enough men talking about this. There's a few. Yes. And a lot of them, though, this sounds a little dismissive. A lot of them approach from too secular of a perspective, and they dismiss the importance of these meekness and submitting to God. And without that piece, there's something missing. I've coached secular men before. I've had a lot of men I've worked with that are not faith-based. And it's kind of like coaching with a hand tied behind your back. Because like the ultimate cosmic power of the universe is right there waiting to be a guide and a tool and to come in there with his divine healing power. He's like, well, let's send him off the side. Let's use Michael, who's a way lesser tool. So it works. You can get through it there. But ultimately, the best work always comes when he's involved.
Preach. Mic drop. Yes. 1000%. So, Michael, what is your heart's greatest wish?
I think right now my heart's greatest wish is that I can become the man that my wife and my family need. Like it's an ongoing process. It's not a one and done. I can stand here. I've got a lot of truths I can offer you, but I still am a work in progress myself. I just mentioned the other day, I got upset with my wife, and I handle it so much better now than I used to. Oh man, I just cringe when I think back of Michael there. Yeah, early marriage days. Oh.
When you're saying this, I'm cringing as well, but I'm not really showing it like the way the thing unfolded.
I'm an open book right now. It's all out there. The more So there's a principle in the Catholic Church called subsidiarity, and the idea of subsidiarity is that you put the locus of authority at the lowest point possible in the total chain. And so what this means, let's make this practical. The city should be in charge of the issues within the city. A county should be in charge of issues that only affect the county. The state should only deal with issues between counties and nothing like that level, right? And the federal government should have as little to do as possible, except for what little bit goes between states and deals with the external. Now, that's obviously not the system we have. I kind of would like it if we did, but that's a different story. But the idea of subsidiarity is you push the authority down as much. So what is my authority? Like if I really dive down with that principle to myself, my first goal, my wife, and next goal is my children. And the data is overall clear. If I love my if I love my wife well, that was a twister, that is more effective at helping my children succeed than loving my children. It sounds counterproductive, but the data is overwhelmingly clear. If I want my kids to be successful, happy, productive, safe from drugs, not in jail, not pregnant and on the streets to doing drug deals, whatever, love my wife. That data is inarguable. It echoes from every single study that's done. And it comes back that says, Michael, subsidiarity says, if you want your life to be amazing, be an amazing husband, love your wife well. Next step, love those kids. And next step, in the opportunity God gives me, try to help people out in the world. But even, if I can share, Nicolette was super generous today. An extended family member today was having a confirmation in the church, and they announced this last minute. It was kind of a funny thing. It came up last minute, and they're like, "Can you guys please come?" And I looked at the calendar. It happened to fall exactly during the meeting I initially scheduled. And so I emailed her and texted, and last minute, like, "Please remove this. I can go to this confirmation." Blah blah blah. And she was very gracious. She said yes, and it's such a great example in that moment that this young man, he saw us walk in the church, and his face lit up. And afterwards, he came up to me and he shook my hand and said, "Thank you so much for being here. That meant so much to me." And it seems so silly. Like, as engineers, we're like, there's no numbers that came from this, no net profit, no bread was made, no serviceable goods were finished by this time that Michael invested. But the most important resource of all is these relationships. And to pour into relationships is to become a rich man.
Yeah. Oh, I felt that. Wow. Do you have a mantra that you live by?
I know that I do. I mean, maybe it's something like, there is a God, it's not me. But I every time I get focused on Michael, things get bad. It's a universal truth. If I focus on what Michael needs, if I focus on what Michael needs to work on, that's okay. But when I focus on taking care of what Michael needs, it gets worse. And so the more I just submit to the Lord, as painful as it is, the better things get.
Wow. I have so many awakenings right now. Like, now I'm understanding things why they unfolded the way they did. And I'm going to go and rectify them. Thank you so much, Michael. Two more questions, Michael. Is there anything that keeps you up at night, or do you sleep?
I'm getting older. I hate to say that. Age has been creeping up on me. And I used to be, my wife is so mad at this. I used to be the sort that I would get into bed and I was like, boom, out. Like, you could drop a ball and I would be out before it hit the ground. She was so mad because then she'd be up for 2 hours as I was already passed out. And then I would just like sleep like a baby until, as I'm getting older, that's not as much true. I think there's a funny thing. When you are a young parent, you're up all night long taking care of the infants, right? Because I have 6 kids. We've been down that road. They puke, they poop, they do all the stuff, right? And so you lose a lot of sleep due to young kids. And in a funny way, as you get older and you start to realize the gravity of what you're doing and these souls about to leave your care forever, you start to lose sleep a little bit different. You realize that weight. And I think there's part of it is aging. Part of it is just realizing what a significant charge God has entrusted to me. I say that with as much humility as I can, because the truth is that I don't know that I'm worthy of that. He says I am. I got to believe him, but there are times I doubt that. And I think there's a temptation that when we get older and we wake up in the middle of the night, can't go back to sleep, we can fuss, we can get angry, blah, blah, blah. And my invitation to that is to use that as a time of prayer. It's not easy. You don't want to. Your brain doesn't want to. No form of chocolate wand or salad wand do I want to pray at that moment, right? But it's an opportunity to transform and redeem even that time. And this is, I'll say, what is so fundamental to the Christian faith is the statement that says, everything God allows, he allows to bring about a greater good, even something that seems bad. And there's a lot of bad things that happen. And bluntly, losing a few hours of sleep is not that bit bad. It was just an example at the moment. The ability to say to all those things, God allowed this to happen for a greater good. And to believe that and to cling to that. And to search in our own limited way for what that could be. And if we can't find anything else, Just use that time for prayer. I don't know if that answers the question.
Whoa! Wow! I'm. There is a reason why I am here today. Like it is just as truly a journey for me as well as it is talking to each one of the guests, like yourself. Whew. Okay. Last question, Michael. If you could create a quote right now for you to lead to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
You cannot do it alone, and you are not alone. I have to put them both in there. So I think there's a double whammy lie. The world believes, and the devil has sold it to us hard. The world has sold us that we are alone, and we have to be able to make it alone. And neither of those is true. And they tie together in a really sinister way to create this feeling of helplessness of, I have to do this. I've got no one. Like, I'm here. Like, I see the people at church, maybe. I see the people where I work. Like, okay, fine. I give them a hug. But it's this loneliness. And Henry David Thoreau said that men lead lives of quiet desperation. It has never been more true. When Mother Teresa landed, the first time she came to the U.S., she gets off the plane and she walks out and she says, in her sweet little old Mother Teresa voice, "I have never been to a land of such poverty." And the people with her are like, "Mother, what are you talking about? Like, this is the United States of America. This is like the most richest nation in the world. What are you talking about?" She looks at them in that one of her sweet little voice where she says, "Emotional poverty." And I think that describes our time. I think we are alone, and loneliness is toxic. You look at loneliness and what loneliness does to the psychology, and it causes us to die. You see this in the studies of the Russian babies. After the wars, the babies that weren't touched and held, they died. They couldn't do it. And even the ones that made it had permanent mental damage. And we think somehow that we can be, as adults, be immune from these effects of loneliness. We weren't meant to be alone. We weren't. It doesn't work. That's just not how this critter we call human works. And so, number one, you're not alone. And you cannot do this alone. You have to find other people. You have to take that risk. It is painful. There will be rejections, but you got to do it. It's a little longer than one sentence. I hope that still counts.
No, that brought a surge of emotion to me. True. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you, Michael. I think you are a wonderful, wonderful human being, and you're doing great work in your community. And having you on the show is really a step up to what I want to share with the world as well, to the feeling of worthiness. And truly, this is all connected. And I just want to say my heart is just bursting with gratitude to you and to God. To God.
Yeah, give the credit to him. I'm just a poor voice piece.
I always take this with me. Here, take the message. Don't look at the messenger. Look at the message.
Yeah, I'm bald. Don't look at here. Right off of that, right? So I actually encourage you not to look. It's better for the eyes to not look.
But then you're such a comedian. I enjoyed our conversation so much, Michael. Thank you.
I did too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Please stay in touch. I might just call you on for another episode. We could probably talk about other things.
I'm available. I love to talk. So I love meeting fun people too.
Likewise. So thank you, Michael. When this airs, I will be sure to tag you. And
that sounds perfect.
And if you want to leave some message to our listeners out there,
yeah, absolutely. I'd say if anything I've said to you has resonated, if you want to learn more, if you want to go deeper. So right now, I'm really bad. I'm an engineer. I'm bad at marketing. I'm bad at SEO. Like, I'm bad at all that stuff. So I just name stuff what it is. My website's called Catholic Life Coach for Men because I'm a Catholic life coach who works with men. My podcast is called Catholic Life Coach for Men because I couldn't come up with a new name, so I just used the same name. And so, like, if you want to find me, look up for Catholic Life Coach for Men. And I work with anyone who's of the faith. I'm Catholic. It's part of who I am. And that sets my identity. I said before, you have to make sure your values align. You know, if you're interested, by the time this airs, I should have this free introductory faith assessment going along, and I'll send Nicolette a link if that works. If not, just Google it. That'll be on my website too. We'll find it.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Michael.
Thank you.
Hope you have a great day, Michael.
You too, Nicolette.
I wish you all the best in your life. Sending you all the love and light your way, in your family, in your community. Thank you, Michael. I'll see you.